Frank Figliuzzi, I've got about a million questions for you, but let me first get your thoughts. I've seen you on TV since the story broke, but to the president's response, he certainly, once again, isn't acting innocent.
He continues to act like someone who's acting in the best interests of Russia. And, you know, your question about is it possible that the president's unwittingly answered questions about his own counterintelligence investigation, he's answering those questions every day through his actions, his decision-making, his demeanor, and those of his closest aides, including Secretary Mnuchin. So, look, this is mind-boggling. Every counterintelligence professional always wrestles with the what-if question. What if the worst-case scenario happened? We know that foreign adversaries do their best to penetrate, get deep inside our government, even hire people to come on board inside the government. But the notion that it would get to the highest level and the Oval Office is indeed, even for a grizzled counterintelligence veteran, it's mind-boggling.
I felt sizzled after I read it as well, so I think they both apply. Frank Figliuzzi, I want to ask you about, I think the president responded with an 8-installment tweet storm Saturday morning, which Mike and his colleagues also wrote about. Let me read you one of the weekend responses, because I think lots of people think his Twitter feed is sort of the window into his tortured soul. He tweeted, "The FBI was in complete turmoil. See the New York Post, because of Comey's poor leadership and the way he handled the Clinton mess, not to mention his usurpation of powers from the Justice Department. My firing of James Comey was a great day for America. He was a crooked cop who's being totally protected by his best friend Bob Mueller and the 13 angry Democrats. Leaking machines who have no interest." I feel dirty even reading this, but let me finish it. "Leaking machines who have no interest in going after the real collusion and much more by crooked Hillary Clinton, her campaign, and the DNC." A million lies, a few smears, and I think some accusations of crimes in there.
So let's break down what it takes to open a counterintelligence case, what it takes to keep it alive, and what it takes in the context of putting the president perhaps in the subject line of the case title. So your viewers need to understand that even a preliminary counterintelligence inquiry requires a standard of reasonable suspicion that someone is or may be an agent of a foreign power. You're also allowed to open that case if you believe that an individual is being targeted by a foreign power, and you need to see his side of the equation. How is he responding, communicating to those overtures? Then you would have 90-day review by supervisors. You would, at some point soon, after about 180 days, you'd get to DOJ, where lawyers are starting to look at this, and you're constantly being asked to show evidence of progress in the investigation, and it's either move ahead to a full or close the case. A full investigation requires specific and articulable facts that someone is or may be an agent of a foreign power. So how do I translate all of that for folks who say this is just a couple of upset FBI agents upset that their boss has been fired? I say, look, there are layers of review, teams of lawyers, DOJ National Security Division looking at this, and ultimately what was decided? It was decided that a special counsel was needed. And by the way, I think that's the right decision for just this reason. Here we are discussing, was this motivated by emotion? Was it motivated by loyalty to Comey? It really doesn't matter, because it was handed to a special counsel. And whether he kept that alive or not is what we need to understand.
I want everyone to participate in this exercise of jumping in a time capsule, because it's important to understand what was going on at this time. The president tweeted the day before he fired Comey, General Flynn was given the highest security clearance by the Obama administration, but the fake news seldom likes talking about that. Ask Sally Yates under oath if she knows how classified information got into the newspapers. He gave a now infamous interview to Lester Holt where he says, "I fired Comey," or at least sounded like he was saying he fired Jim Comey because of the Russia investigation. He also posed for real happy, smiley pictures in the Oval Office with 2 Russian diplomats who had been inside the Oval Office for really the latter part of the Obama administration, and said, "I got a lot of pressure relieved when I fired that nut job Jim Comey." So this was a time where there were lots of, it might have even been conservative. I know part of responses, "Oh, this just confirms the president's suspicions." This was really, there were so many public-facing pieces of evidence that the president was working in a way that made Vladimir Putin very happy, and as Frank says, continues to do so.
Well, again, if we want to stay in this time capsule, this meeting that's up on the screen right now, he didn't just make the reference to Comey and the pressure that was relieved. It's also the case that the White House press corps was not allowed in that room. The reporting that came out of that room came from TASS, I believe, from state Russian media. It's also the case that in that room, I believe...
Just told me that you're right. The credit there is the Russian foreign ministry.
I believe
Russian state TV.
Correct, Russian state TV. It's also the case that I believe in that meeting there were accusations later raised in some reporting that the president, in addition, disclosed classified information to those Russian officials that potentially jeopardized American security interests in the Middle East in that very meeting. So there was a lot of stuff going on just in that meeting alone. And I do want to, I want to go back to Frank to make the point that I think you're driving towards, because Frank can speak to this in a way that I cannot. Frank, you just talked about the layers of review that you would have to go through in order to justify a counterintelligence investigation against the president. The thing that you didn't draw out, I don't think, in that conversation, which was very helpful, was what's the nature of the kind of evidence that you would need? I mean, when I saw the reporting on this over the weekend, we're talking about, well, the FBI was concerned because of these public things, the things like what Nicole and I were just talking about, the Lester Holt interview. Plainly, and I believe I heard you discuss this a little over the weekend, the likelihood that the FBI would go through the kind of review you're talking about and engage in the incredibly politically sensitive act of opening a counterintelligence investigation against the President of the United States, the kind of proof or indications that they would need are much more than what was in the public domain, no?
Yeah, you're right on the money, because if you walk into my office as the head of counterintelligence for the FBI, and the team tells me, boss, it's time to open up on the president, I'm going to need more than his public antics. And rest assured, his public antics are head scratchers and could be the reasonable suspicion. Right. But you know darn well the layers of review that are going to happen. So I'm going to say, look, where's the other intel? Where's the SIGINT, the signals intelligence? Where's the human sourcing? What are we hearing Russian officials saying when they talk about this president? Are they referring to him as theirs? Are they saying we won? What about that meeting that just occurred in the Oval Office that we've captured via intercept of the officials back when they go home or in the States? That's my gut feeling, John, that what we're talking about here is far more than meets the public eye.
Right.